So today we are going to be hopefully giving you some tips to get you ready for next week, right? Students come next week. So we've had some updates over the weekend. So this is like the perfect time to be thinking about these things. And we're just going to run through the list of like from the Connected Learning team, what do we think that you might want to take a look at before the beginning of the school year? Just some things to consider, think about. If you've been at TSC for a while, it's probably, hopefully, just going to be reminders of things that you already know how to do. We'll talk a little bit about updates to some of the products that we use. And then we'll remind you of some resources that are available to you throughout the school year. I am excited to share that we will be back out at the buildings this year for IIB. So we are really looking forward to getting some face-to-face time with you guys. Not that this Google Meet stuff isn't great, but I'm ready to be back in the school with you guys as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about Google Classroom today. And Chad just let us know this morning that Google Classrooms are beginning to arrive. So that's awesome. So we might be able to see some of those, or you guys might be able to see some of those. So we'll look at how do we find our Google Classrooms and what do we do about accepting those invitations and all that. And then before students arrive, adjusting settings. So we want to make sure that we're getting it prepared for students so that it's not messy right at the beginning of the school year. Then we'll look at updating your teacher webpage. I would imagine that many of you on your teacher webpage last year had information that was pertinent to last year, specific to last year, and that things may have changed for this year. So you'll want to make sure that those things are updated. So again, we'll just remind you of a few of those. We'll go into Clever because as an elementary teacher, you have access to Clever and you can customize some of those things. And many of you used it a lot last year with your students. We'll remind you of the wonderful devices that your students will be given and what you might need to do to prepare for students arriving next week. And then we'll just go into two resources for you in IncidentIQ and our Connected Learning Team YouTube channel. So first is Google Classroom, and Chad just let us know that all of the Google Classrooms are done. So as a reminder, you're going to see anything that you're rostered in PowerSchool, you will see those through Google Classroom. So you are going to see multiple classrooms. And when you get those invitations, they'll come through like this. They may not say AM attendance anymore. It might be a different name, but you'll see either decline or accept. If you decline the invitation, students won't see that either. And so maybe that's just a classroom that you don't plan to use. Last year, some of our elementary teachers used multiple Google Classrooms. Some just used a single Google Classroom. So you only need to accept the invitations that you intend to use this year. So the classes that you intend to use this year. Out of curiosity, for those of you that were at TSC last year, did you use one or more than one class in your Google Classroom? So you can just type that in the chat just because I'd like to know for research purposes if you used more than one classroom or just one single Google Classroom. So students won't see those sections until you actually accept that invitation. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, and I think a lot of our primary teachers, so like maybe K1, 2, they kind of stuck to one classroom, and then maybe our 4 or 5 teachers sometimes got into multiple classes, but I'd say overall one class was pretty common. As a reminder with all of these things, rosters are updated nightly. So if a new kid arrives, Tuesday morning, be patient. That student will eventually get into your Google Classroom. You are able to change the name of your class because AM attendance or attendance AM isn't super helpful. I'm thinking like for kindergartners or first graders, you might want to make it a little more descriptive. So you can actually change the name of that classroom and that's fine. It won't mess with PowerSchool at all. So I'm going to go into my Google Classroom now, and I have just a sample Google class. And I do want to mention also a change this year that will affect your students. It won't really affect you, but it will affect your students. If you are a K1 teacher, K1 students will now be added to a Tech Lab Google Classroom. And that's just to make the elementary Tech Lab experience a little better for those students. So just keep that in mind. You'll see those classes pop up if you're a K1 teacher. So I'm in my classroom right now, and I'm going to go to my settings because I want to show you where you can change that class name. So again, if I go into my class, I'll have my stream here. And if I come up to the top, I've got that settings wheel. Just click in there, and then right here, that's where I'm going to change the name of my class. So I can name it whatever I'd like for my students. And then I also recommend changing the header image for your kids and keep it consistent, especially if you're dealing with younger learners. You want that consistency so that they always know I'm going to look for the classroom that has maybe Mrs. Murchison's Bitmoji in it, or like a jungle theme, or whatever our classroom theme is. We want to make sure that those students know how to find that easily. So I can change my class name here, and I can change it as often as I'd like. So if you are going to use more than one classroom, you can change it to be more descriptive and more accurate for your students. So going back to my stream, if I want to change this theme, because this is a little bit boring here, but if I go to select theme, I'm able to change. I can add any of the themes that are available to me. I can also, if I come back here, I can go to upload photo, and maybe I create my own theme somewhere else. I create my own header image. I can add that here. If you're looking for a place to create your own header image, I highly recommend Canva. We actually had a summer session last week, maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, that was all about Canva. And it allows you to create graphics. So you could actually create something that would be the size of that header image. And you can use Canva then to create things like for your classroom webpage and stuff. But this is going to help students identify which class is yours. Just showing you an overview of what it looks like when you have multiple classes, because I have all the tech labs. I have all of my header images here. On an iPad, it's going to show up as like horizontal bars for the students. So it makes it very convenient then to have an image that stands out among the other images so that students can find it easily. So looking back at our class settings also, we're going to make some adjustments. So as you get your Google Classrooms, I cannot stress this enough, go into those class settings and make adjustments as needed. Please review all of those each year because they maybe have added new things, or you have a different group of students and so you want to change some of those settings. But under our class details, where we are changing our class name, we can scroll down to general, and we're just going to review this information here. So the first thing is invite codes. This would be like if I didn't have TSC roster my classes and I was creating my own class, it might be helpful to have an invite code. For us, we are rostering our classes, so I can actually turn this off. I like to do that because then there's no question on a student inviting another student. I don't think that any of our kids would do that, but you just never know. So I would turn that manage invite codes, I would just turn that off, or just verify that it is turned off. The next thing, and I'm going to actually change it to the defaults here. By default, and I hate that it's by default like this, but this is just the way it is. By default, in your stream, which is that digest of everything happening in your class in Google Classroom, by default, students can post and comment. Not a super fan of that. So I always recommend that teachers come in here and change this to only the teacher can post or comment. Now, if your students are older, or you've already had conversations with them about commenting on things, then you could always come here to the second one, students can only comment. But I would definitely recommend changing it off of that first option, students can post and comment. We don't need them posting and commenting in the stream. So I usually use only teachers can post or comment. Now, if you're doing an assignment with a student or you ask a question to the kids, they can still comment on that. But this is just talking about within that stream, only you're able to post things to the stream. So speaking of the stream, it can get really messy if you keep it on this default setting here, which is show condensed notifications. This means that anytime that you create something in Classroom, it will let students know in the stream. Sarah Margerson has created this assignment due on this day. Sarah Margerson has made an announcement. Sarah Margerson has asked a question. It's like way too many things. So I usually come in here and say hide notifications, which means the stream then becomes just announcements. And we'll look at that in just a second. But the stream is just announcements. It's not anything that's happening in classwork. Because if you've been here for a little while and you know, classwork is really where the stuff happens, right? The content. The stream, it could be announcements or things like that. But for the most part, we want classwork to stay in classwork. Scrolling down, I usually don't change the setting, show deleted items. Guardian summaries, this is totally up to you if you want to use Guardian summaries. From what I've heard from teachers that tried it in the past, they're not great. And sometimes they open up a can of worms that maybe you want the parents to just be checking PowerSchool for grades. If they're really curious what's happening in Google Classroom, they can have their students sign in at home. It's fine. So I would maybe recommend shutting off Guardian summaries unless you've used them in the past and they've been very successful for you. And then finally, Google Meet. So as you remember from last year, because I'm sure many of you use this feature, Google Meet is a part of Google Classroom, which means that you have this unique code that's just for you and your students, and it makes it really easy for you to join a Google Meet. We don't know what this year is going to bring, so you can always toggle this on and off throughout the school year. I would recommend keeping it off if it's not needed. Now, if you have students that are absent for an extended period of time and you have decided to use Google Meet to reach those students, you can always come back in here and turn it back on so that Johnny, when he's at home, he has that class Google Meet. And just as a reminder for some security measures, teachers have to start the meeting. Students can't start the meeting. You should be the last one to leave. And once you leave, students won't be able to get back in. So it's really a very safe option in terms of connecting with students virtually. But do remember that parents would not be able to join this because they're not a part of that Google Classroom. So if you are planning to do like a virtual back to school night next week, you'll want to use a Google Meet from your calendar to connect with parents. And then we don't do very much grading within here, so I'm not going to talk too much about that because we keep all of those things in PowerSchool. And then I'll come up here to the top and just click Save. So we talked about shutting off those invite codes, customizing your stream, and hiding notifications for your classwork. So setting up topics, this is like, everybody has their own opinion on how they set up topics. So I'm interested to know how you set up topics last year. Did you do it by date? Did you do it by subject? Let us know in the chat how you set up your topics last year. Maybe you started one way and then changed it and went a different direction. I don't think there's any right or wrong answers here. It just depends on your students. I think last year it really depended on if you were an in-person teacher or a virtual teacher or both. That made a huge difference on your topic setup. I know many teachers, and we can already see in the chat, many teachers liked to set it up by date, and that's totally fine. So let's look at just setting up some topics by date. When I come to my classwork here in Google Classroom, I'm going to choose Create and then Topic. And then I'm able to add my dates here. So we start August 11th. We'll say August 11th through the 13th because that's kind of the first week of school. And so I'm just going to add that topic there. As a reminder, these topics will not show up for students unless they have content in them. So I can actually create several weeks or months worth of topics, and they won't show up for students until I'm ready for them to show up for students, as in I actually take material or I take assignments and I put them in those topics. One tip that our teachers really liked last year that I want to show, if I click the three dots, I'm going to rename this topic, or I can create a new topic this way. But one thing I love to do, and there's two ways to get to it, but I like to add emojis to the beginning of my topic. So I can either right click And you can see here that I have the emoji keyboard. If I click on that, it's going to pull up a ton of different emojis. So if I'm teaching, it doesn't really even matter what grade level what grade level I'm teaching. I like to add a star to that week's topic because, as you probably remember, by the time we get to the end of the semester, there are a lot of topics, especially if you're doing them by week. Maybe you're doing like every couple weeks or a month or something like that, but there are a lot of topics. So I almost always add that star. And then when the week is over, I'll take that star away and I'll add a star to the next week. So this is just an easy way to pull out that information for students and make it easier for them to see. The other way that I can get to this, and you may have seen it when I right-clicked, but if I click the Windows key and the period on my keyboard, it's also going to bring up that emoji keyboard. You can add emojis pretty much anywhere. So it's going to act like a regular keyboard. I can add them to topics. I can add them to assignment names. And then also within assignment descriptions, I can add those there. If I'm not looking at creating date topics, I can also create just topics. So I'm going to come in here and create a math one. And so then I have a math topic, and we're doing a seesaw presentation later today, so I have a seesaw topic as well. But one idea that I saw, I liked it. I saw a teacher do it last year. She had her subjects for the day. So let's say, just keeping it simple, math, reading, and writing. So those were the three main topics. So she had all three topics there up at the top. And for that day, for that particular day on a Monday, each of these, writing, reading, math, would have its own individual assignments, whatever the students were going to be doing. Then the other thing that she did was she created, let's call it old assignments. She created a topic that was all the way down at the bottom. So I'm going to just scoot this down. There we go. All the way down at the bottom, that was called old assignments, right down here. So if I move these two things in here, let's imagine that it's Monday and my students are going to do a slides activity in writing, and they're going to do some material activity in reading. So Monday has finished. I'm done with Monday. And now I'm ready to take these Monday things out and put the Tuesday things in. So what I can do is and you already saw me do this, but I can click and drag this slides assignment into old assignments. And maybe I also did a little planning and put the date of these assignments in the name. So now I'm taking all of those assignments and I'm almost throwing them like in an archive. And I know that that's probably been the number one feature that we've heard from teachers that they want. They want to be able to not delete an assignment, but just tuck it away for students so that they don't really see it. We don't have an archive option yet, but this might be, and maybe you call it archive. That is a way to sort of put things away out of the student's sight or not out of their direct line of view and keep it still within your Google Classroom. And then I would have those main topics up there at the top. Again, just something to think about. Other ways that people have done Google Classroom organization this year. I want to plug two sessions that we had this summer. Shelly Reichert did a session for us and Leah Person did a session. And both of those were just unbelievable with their tips on how they organized their Google Classroom and how they shared materials with students. Both of those teachers were virtual. And so I think they just learned a lot this year about how they liked to set up their Google Classroom. So if you're looking for inspiration or you're trying to solve a problem, you might check out those webinars. I'll send you the link to those in my follow-up email, but they're definitely a really great resource of like teachers that are doing this every day. How are they organizing their information? Okay, Last thing is updates to Google Classroom that I want to make you aware of. The first one is being able to assign to multiple classes. So if you are looking at creating multiple classes, or if you're a specials teacher and you have multiple classrooms and you want to assign the exact same assignment to all of your classrooms, all you have to do is click that menu at the top and then be able to click those names and assign it to multiple classrooms, which is great. And then the last one is rich text editing. This came out last school year, but I want to call it out one more time. So I'm going to come over here to my stream, and we already talked about the stream being where we're making announcements to our students. So if I want to make an announcement to my students, right up here, I'm going to announce something. And now you can see down at the bottom, I have the ability to create like a bulleted list. So these might be steps. I can also bold or italicize or underline different words. This allows me to create that announcement for students. So maybe I say step 1, do this, step 2, do that, and step 3, finish. So maybe I want to make these bold, and I'm able to do that. And then I also want to add in a little celebration at the bottom. I can announce this to multiple classes. So just like I can assign to multiple classes, can you guys imagine if you had all these classes? These are all my tech lab classes, but I can assign it to multiple classes. I can also make announcements for specific students. So if I have a group of like 5 kids that are out, I can announce something to just those 5 kids to be able to get that information to them. I can also attach things in here just as a reminder. I can schedule this announcement to go out at a certain time, which is nice. I can also save it or post it, and then that announcement will go out to students. So you can see there, I've got that little emoji. I had this question in a training last week, and I just want to address it here just in case anybody's wondering. This purple M here is an extension called Moat. Last spring, we made this available for staff and students. We have several resources on our YouTube channel about Moat. So if you're interested in learning more about that, it allows you to create audio comments for students. And it's really great if you've got students that are not ready to read comments. Moat is a good extension to install. All right, we are going to move on to our classroom web pages now. So a few things that I just remind teachers to update on a regular basis is making sure your contact information is correct. We had a lot of teachers that changed buildings this year, and you want to make sure that all of that school information is correct if you've changed buildings or changed grade levels. Obviously, if your classwork or homework policies have changed, and then of course, school year information. So as I already mentioned, you probably had things on your web page last year that addressed global issues that you may need to update this year. We probably don't want to remove everything, but we may need to update things. If you, let's say you created, oh, perfect, I already have one here. If you created a remote learning page last year and it shows up in your class navigation or your website navigation, you're not totally ready to get rid of it. I mean, you're probably ready to get rid of that page, but maybe you're thinking, I'm not going to really delete the page yet because just in case, who knows what's going to happen, I want to save that information. So in your pages on your Google site, we're going to come to the 3 dots, and we can actually hide this page from navigation. Now, you as the owner of that page, you can still get to it. So here's my remote learning page. I had some activities on there. These were links that my students were going to do. Again, I'm probably ready to break up with it, but not totally. So I want to keep this information, but it's not going to be accessible by my parents or my students yet. Now, if we get to a point where I need to utilize that, I can come in here, 3 dots, show in navigation. So it makes it really easy then to keep your information without actually deleting it, just hiding it from the people that are looking at your page. And then a few other newer features. If you haven't been in your Google site for a while, layouts are new, which just make it really easy to build a nice looking web page. So you can add a picture here, a title, and then some text. Collapsible text, it's very similar to our TSC webpage. We have a lot of these on our webpage, but it will take a header. So here's my heading, and here's my text. Oh, there we go. And it will create almost like a menu. So you can see here, I see my heading, and over on the right-hand side, I've got a little down arrow. And if I click on that, it will expand that heading. So if your web page feels like it's really long, there's a lot of scrolling, you might consider putting some of your information in headings. This is also a really wide heading, and it doesn't need to be that wide. So I can always drag it and make it smaller. So maybe I've got like a math heading, a science heading, a reading heading. And so parents could expand those to see the information on that particular subject. The next thing we have, these are going to be all of our embed options here, and these are pretty similar to what you're used to. Being able to embed items within Google. Public service announcement. We see this all the time. Even though you have published your website to your parents, you have embedded your slideshow on your public website. Google doesn't know that you want to share that slideshow, we'll say. So you need to make sure that you're going into your slideshows and changing the sharing settings so that parents can view those. A lot of times we will visit websites and it'll say request access because the slideshow has not been shared. The web page has, but the slideshow hasn't. So how do I check if my web page is shared properly? When you come up here to the top, you have the option to copy the published site link. And so I can then copy that link. I don't even know if this web page is copied. Oh, yes, it is. So I can copy this link. And then what I like to do is go in Chrome. Oh, not that one. I'm going to come into Chrome. You cannot see this menu, but I click on my face up here at the top, and I open a guest window. When I open that guest window, I'll paste my website in there, and then I can see what does my site look like when a guest is viewing it. Maybe I send it to a friend that doesn't work for TSC. Make sure they don't work for TSC. And we want to see, is everything shared properly? So that's just, again, a nice public service announcement in case you are wondering if your website is ready. I mentioned Canva earlier when we were talking about Google Classroom headings, and we can also create a Canva heading for this as well. If you're looking for websites to kind of browse from other TSC teachers, you saw here on this, I have Claire Brown. Claire Brown is at Mayflower Mill. And I asked her, hey, can I use your site as an example? So she's got several pieces of information here. She's got a pretty good site with different pictures and things like that. So if you're looking to look at another teacher's webpage, remember you can always go to our staff directory and you can just browse other teachers' web pages and see what they have and see if you want to steal any of that information. Start within your building or your grade level and then kind of work out from there. All right, next we're going to look at Clever. As a reminder, Clever is kind of a hub for your students to access certain applications, as well as you to share resources with students. So a few instant login applications that your students will have is BrainPop, Reading Eggs, IXL, as well as all the elementary tech lab links are going to be found here as well. So you'll see those K-5 tech links will be down there, and those will be the things that students will access. Now you're also able to customize what your students have access to within your classroom. So as a student signs in, they're going to see like Mrs. Margison's webpage, and they're also going to see the TSC district links. When they click on my links, for instance, they're going to see Edulastic, Codable. This looks like maybe it goes to the TSC webpage. I have a welcome link here. So I can add resources to my students or to my students' pages. And I just come up here to the top, S. Margison's page, and I'm able to add links here for my students. If you want to customize the links, well, maybe actually I want to get rid of some links that I used last year that I'm not planning to use this year. So like this TSC welcome message one was probably last year's welcome message. So I'm just going to come here to edit. And then over here on the right, I'm going to delete that link. So I'm able to customize those links and see what students have access to or what maybe they had access to last year. If I want to add new links, I'll come down here to the bottom right. And then I can add a category. I can add some resources here. I can also add an application. As a reminder for applications, let me actually go to the library of applications. Some applications are going to be free. Some of them will be freemium, which means they might ask you to pay at some point. So I can click on an application here, and down at the bottom, I can see like this one is freemium. So I will just want to take a look at what does that mean? Does it just mean that my students won't have access to certain features, or that access will be cut off after 2 weeks or something like that? So I would just beware of some of these applications because some of them do require subscriptions. So just keep that in mind. If I can find a application here, so that's another freemium one. Let's see. Book Creator, another freemium one here, but some of these applications will be free for your students to use, and you don't always have to put things in Clever. I can also keep things in Google Classroom because that's kind of the question too, is Clever versus Google Classroom. And Clever, your students are really going to be using those for those instant login applications. I would say most of the links that you're sending them, though, you're going to be sending that through Google Classroom. So just keep that in mind. But I do highly recommend coming in here before the beginning of the school year and cleaning up those links that your students have access to or that your students see. Okay, the next item here. Now there will be some information coming soon that will expand on this a little bit more. But if you are a K-1 teacher, as a reminder, all of your students will get iPads. We do ask that you assign iPads to each student, and you will be getting a link to a spreadsheet. Again, stay tuned. You'll have more information sent to you about that, but students shouldn't be sharing devices, but we will ask that you assign a particular device to each student so that they have them, and this will happen in the next few weeks. You'll get, or I believe maybe later this week, you'll get a link to a spreadsheet that will allow you to let us know which student has which device. For Chromebooks, again, we're asking that you assign a Chromebook to students. Don't just let them pick out of the cart whatever Chromebook they want to use. They really should be using the same Chromebook every day. As the students log into their Chromebooks for the first time, they'll automatically be signed in with our TSC inventory, so it will be assigned to them. We have some information here about first-time login instructions. This is going to be really useful if your students are second grade and they've never used a Chromebook before. You might want to look at these login instructions for them. These have been updated recently, so if you've got any questions about this, you can let us know, but it gives you some screenshots of letting the students log into their Chromebook for the first time. As a reminder, with both of those tools, iPads and Chromebooks, students will be using those. The iPads they'll be using in Tech Lab. The Chromebooks they won't be taking to Tech Lab because likely your Tech Lab computer lab has actually been updated with Chromeboxes. So your 2 through 5 students won't need to worry about taking their Chromebooks down, but they might for the first couple weeks, and your tech aide will let you know, because we, as part of Tech Lab, help the students learn how to use that device. So that's just something, again, to keep in mind, that your students will actually be taught how to use those devices and some of the programs on there and the apps on there as well. All right, the last part here is going to be all about what resources are available to you from the Connected Learning team that might be helpful as you begin your school year, or if you're looking for resources to reach out to our team. So the IncidentIQ system here is going to be our technology ticket system. We rolled this out last year in the middle of a pandemic, but we rolled this out last year, and this is how you're submitting tickets for devices. Now, this is not just your device, like if your desktop gets broken or your laptop needs a new screen, but also student devices. So if if there's an iPad in your classroom and it has a cracked screen, please don't just set it aside and give the student a different iPad. Please make sure that you are submitting a ticket so that that can get repaired quickly. Your building technician will take care of that so that you can get a new iPad. Even if you have extra devices in your classroom, we want to get those repaired. We don't want to get bombarded at the end of the school year with a bunch of broken devices, and we didn't even realize that we had these broken devices. So there is a lot of information on this slide. Obviously, the link to get to IncidentIQ, it's also on the TSC webpage in several different locations. I highly recommend bookmarking that so that you can easily get to it. You're going to log in with your Google account. There is a slideshow that we've created that just provides you a little more information, like in-depth information, but you can see on this little video here, it's pretty easy to click through and you're just answering some questions. So what kind of device is it? Where are you located? What's going on with it? So is there a hardware issue, like a cracked screen or something? Are you not able to connect to your projector? Is there an issue with a program that you're using? So not only are you able to submit tickets about hardware issues, but you can also submit tickets about software issues. So if you're having an issue with a particular app, maybe the app portal isn't working on your iPad, so you can actually submit a ticket on those things. In addition to our ticket system being through IncidentIQ, we also have an area called the knowledge base. Now, the knowledge base includes basically everything that the Connected Learning team has ever created about our technology. It's included in the knowledge base. So I want to show you what that looks like. So if I come to IncidentIQ here, I'm going to see all of the applications that might be available to me or to my students. And maybe I want to know, I'm going to look for iPads. Of course, I'm not able to find them right now. There we go. Oh, they're all the way down at the bottom. Okay, so here's my iPads category, and I'm looking at, oh, I need to install apps from the app portal. How do I do that? So I can open up the document there that's included. It opened a PDF, but there is a document on how to install an app from the app portal. Here's some iPad quick fixes. So these were things that, like, last year we were getting a lot of questions about something's not working. Clever's not logging me in, or the iPad, I can't connect it to Wi-Fi. Sometimes we had things like the students were seeing two applications opened at the same time. So there were several items in there that you were asking questions about. And so we began to put those things almost in like a question and answer database there. Here's a bunch of information about IXL. So there's a lot of really good things in there. If you're looking for, I know they sent something about XYZ, you can come in here to the knowledge base. Additionally, if you happen to submit a ticket that is related to one of these categories, IncidentIQ will suggest this article so that you can actually maybe troubleshoot some of those things yourself as you're waiting for us to respond to that ticket. So we just wanted to make you aware and remind you that the knowledge base is available. We're going to continue to add things to that as well. Again, as soon as we create something, we always add it to that knowledge base. And then finally, our YouTube channel. We've worked really hard over the last few years to make this just the hub for every webinar we have ever done. And this summer is no different. So I want to show you, if you just go onto YouTube and you search for TSC Connected Learning Team, you'll find it. Actually, I will give you the link in our chat as well. So this is our YouTube channel, and I want to make you aware of the summer 2021 playlist. This is going to be the playlist of all the sessions that we've done this summer, including this one, which will be added here soon, but all the sessions that we've done this summer, so you can go back and watch those sessions. At the end of each session, you'll see the link to submit your form for PGPs. I'm saying this because Thursday is the last day to enter our door prize drawing. I have a bunch of door prizes. You probably see back behind me over here. I've got some IXL stuff. So I'm going to be drawing names for door prizes on Friday morning. You can still get PGPs for each of these sessions through August 31st, but you can't win door prizes after that. So you'll want to make sure that you get these videos watched. But these are really great videos if you're looking at just catching up on some things that you maybe missed this summer. You took some time off, which is totally fine. I did mention 2 videos earlier that I wanted to point out, and this is a day in the life of a virtual teacher. Yes, she talks about being a virtual teacher, but it's really good information that I think would be pertinent to everybody. So that's Leah's session. And then teacher organization with Shelly. This was a great session just about how she organized her Google Classroom and some great ideas in there. And then there are several other elementary sessions that you're able to take a look at. This IXL session with Brittany Gray was awesome. She has a lot of really great insight on how she uses IXL in her classroom. And then finally, as a reminder, you can always book an appointment with a member of the Connected Learning team. All of us have our links in our email signatures, and you can also get to our links if you go to the TSC webpage under the technology department. We have revamped our webpage a little bit, but there are staff resources. And in this staff resources page, which used to be the EdTech PD resources, over here on the left-hand side, you'll see the links to book appointments with us, and you can do that anytime. If you want to meet virtually, that's fine, or we can meet with you in person, but all of that information is there. And then just one last note with this page, the Connected Learning Team communications, all the newsletters that we send every single month are all archived in here, so you can always go back and look at those newsletters. There's information on each of these, but the K-5 ones have information about MOTE. We talked about MOTE a little earlier, so that's where you can find that. You can also find that on our webpage. On our webpage, you'll see the 2020-2021 playlist, which will show you any items that we went through last year that you may have missed.